the response to it was so overwhelming, and people were so supportive and so engaged with it. And then, and then as my life kind of spiraled too, I felt like I can't like post and be out there talking about like this fake version of me that doesn't exist. Like I needed to be pretty transparent if I was going to be public. And so I was kind of like started to open up and be raw about it. And then that response was really amazing, and how much people were like, felt very seen because like they were going through something like that too. And that has continued to go on, that I have felt it's kind of like motivated me to talk about that stuff more and more because of how deeply it resonates with people.
Men are being lied to. You're told midlife is a time for crisis and struggle. In reality, it's a time to thrive. Welcome to the Midlife Male podcast, a show that stops focusing on the why and shows you how to start living life on your terms, because your best days are still ahead. All right, welcome to the Midlife Male podcast. I am your host, Greg Scheinman. Thank you so much for joining me. This week, I have Alli Webb. Alli is the founder of Drybar and the author of The Messy Truth. And she joins me today. Look, the easy play would be to talk about entrepreneurship and scaling a business and the exit and all of those things. But what I really wanted Alli on the program for was to talk about how to actually get through the middle, which is messy, and to get to the truth about what that takes. A story about personal transformation and growth that we don't often see from the outside looking in. And as men, I think we understand how challenging that can be. And from the perspective of a midlife female, I found it fascinating and so much to learn from about taking risk, going all in at the beginning, how things change as you become successful. Not one divorce, but two divorces. Being a mother, putting your child into rehab, experiencing the highest of highs on a professional level, and some really deeply traumatic lows on a personal level, and how you come out with no regrets on the other side, and how Alli has done that through vulnerability, transparency, sharing her story, even having to put an afterword in her book because the second marriage that she writes about in the opening chapter invariably failed. And how do we approach all this in the next phase of our life, this second phase of our life? And how do we accept that the middle is not only messy, but also the sweet spot? Because that is the messy truth. And talking about how relationships can be mended, acceptance, compassion, empathy, blended with a competitive spirit, a strong will, sharp personality, a tenacious drive for success, and all of those things in the bucket. So I'm really grateful to Alli for sharing her time, to being willing to go there, go to that place with me from the get-go. And it was new territory for me as a man to hear all of this and share all of this from a female perspective, but also how uniquely applicable it is and the characteristics of a driven, successful, hardworking, risk-taking entrepreneur. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. All of these things apply to all of us. And all of these decisions, the actions we take, the choices we make, they come at a cost. And the effects that that can have as a woman on the men around them. So let's get to it this week on the Midlife Male podcast. with Alli Webb. All right, let's talk about the plunge. I love my plunge. This is a high quality, great looking, high performance cold plunge. It uses powerful cooling, filtration, and sanitation to give you a perfectly chilled, clean water experience with no ice needed. And look, I don't know who's going to tell you that they love sitting in freezing cold water. I'm not going to tell you that, but what I can tell you is that I love how I feel when I get out of sitting in cold water. So much so that it has become a daily habit. The plunge is the best product that I have found out there for this experience. It is easy. You flip the lid. There is no ice needed. The chiller keeps the water set to exactly what temperature you want it at. I've had mine for years, and it is extremely low maintenance. If you are looking to maximize middle age, if you are looking to bring cold therapy into your life, and you should be, go get a plunge. Go to plunge.com, and when you're there, use promo code Midlife Male and save. Sisu saunas. I am in my Sisu sauna pretty much every day of the week. I have the 2-person Eddy barrel model. They make multiple sizes. Whichever Sisu sauna you go with, rest assured you are getting a quality product, a quality build, and quality performance. Cardiovascular health, autoimmune chronic pain and fatigue conditions, mental health, exercise performance and metabolism, detoxification. Those are 5 of the reasons I am in my Sisu sauna. And they work because when I get out of my Sisu sauna, I simply feel better, happier, and healthier. And you can too. Just go to sisulifestyle.com, use promo code MidlifeMale, and you'll save on your own Sisu sauna. I'm really interested, obviously, in your perspective. I mean, I talk to a lot of, as you know, middle-aged guys. We have not gotten a whole lot of female perspective on a lot of things, and how you see things, maybe from how we do, So I appreciate you giving me your time and doing this. By the way, I love the book.
Oh, thank you.
I love the book. I listened to the book. I thought you did a great job on the audio book.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so fun to record it. It was less fun writing it, but it was fun recording it.
And I love that you left like so many of the kind of pauses in there and some of the voice cracks and like the rawness to it all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my experience, because I basically only listen to books, I rarely read books. And it's like when the author's reading it and you get that like emotion, it's so much better. So that's why I was like, the times where my voice cracked and whatever, I was like, leave it. So, yeah.
Well, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I think you feel like you actually have a person talking to you and with you,
exactly.
Versus I'm just listening to this book or textbook or this life lesson that maybe is not as relatable because it's coming from this, guarded expert. And then you're like, wait, there's this human element to it.
Yeah.
That you actually experienced it all and went through it.
Yeah. It makes such a big difference, I think. And I think people really connect with you and resonate with so much more of their story when they're listening to it. So thanks for
Absolutely. No, look, I enjoy it. It got me through a lot of zone 2 cardio this week.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
It did. And the hard part was not falling off the treadmill when I was trying to make notes to myself when I would hear something and be like, no, we got to get to that. We got to go to that. Like sliding off the treadmill, jumping back on. Like, where was that? Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's so funny. I love it.
Yes. All right. Well, let's jump in.
Yeah.
Even though I like this part kind of the best sometimes. And people are like, well,
are you recording now?
Always. The lesson you learn after like 200 episodes is hit the fucking record button like the second.
I know. You got to capture the small talk.
You get on, because there's the technical stuff and there's the cat that jumps across and the dogs are barking, and like, I want to see what you're wearing and I want to check out all that stuff.
Totally.
What's going on after? So this will probably all stay in. You never know. Let's come right out of the gate. Okay. Here, if we met through a mutual friend. I guess it was a couple of years ago. through Meredith Quill.
Yes, yes. My jewelry, my
Yes.
sparkle partner.
Your sparkle partner, who was my college friend.
Yeah, such a
She
small
was
world.
my two dots friend with her little two dots on the side. And she was my college friend, and out of the blue, I guess, reconnected with me, and then ultimately connected us because you guys were starting the Beckett and Quill Jewelry Company, which, by the way, is terrific.
Thank you.
And you guys were cool enough. You sent Kate some stuff. We tried it out. We talked about it, and it was so cool to see that. And then we jumped on your podcast, you and Adrian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had a good time on that podcast. Yes. And I got to know you both a little bit as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And then I jump on the treadmill, as I was saying the other day, and I'm reading your book. And
oh, you didn't know?
So here's the deal. Okay. I'm reading the book, and it's about the wedding, and it's the two of you, and it's the story. And I'm like 33 seconds into the book, and I'm crying. Okay. Because it's about the wedding and the dancing and the story. And like, that's how I did not know for, I guess, some period of time. And then I got a DM like from Adrian, like we had communicated back and forth. And I was like, oh man, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
And there was like,
it's a good, me too.
And I was like, wow, like heartbroken, there.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time, there's always something you're not seeing.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the line is on divorce or how these things, happen, male, female, anything. But I mean, man, I know it's like a tough spot to maybe even start, but I was like, it's right there in the book, and you're out putting the book out and talking about the book. I'm like, does she even want to talk about that? Like, how does this feel? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truth be told, obviously you're referring to the afterword in the book, which is, when you learned maybe directly from Adrian. Or did you read it in the book first?
But not really, because I got to tell you, like, I didn't know what to say. Like after I didn't know where to go. We're not that close. When I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then I just started thinking about like even my own marriage, and 20 some odd years into this, and I'm 50 and 50 and going like, where is the line with this, with children, with the blended family, with marriage, with divorce, and how? I always struggle with the how. How do we go from one place to the next, from happy to, and together to divorce and starting over. And it just blew me away.
Yeah. I mean, me too. I mean, truth be told. And, the reason that I only, that obviously you read the afterword, which is, really my piece of it and my work and my, I haven't really talked too much about it publicly, except for kind of on Mel Robbins' podcast, which is pretty funny.
Who I love, by the way. And I love Chris. And I've spent a week with Chris at Soul
really?
Degree. I mean,
I've not met him.
He's remarkable, truly.
I'm sure. I wouldn't doubt it. But Mel and I had become friends a couple years prior. And when, ironically, when like the shit hit the fan, I actually reached out to her because she was just so inspiring to me. And I was like, I'm dying. Help me, and she really did. And she gave me some really beautiful advice. And anyways, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it is like, there's a side of me that feels I'm totally good now. Like I was really fucking heartbroken and like face down for months and months. And I was really crushed truly over it. And I can even like feel the emotion like well up in me as I say that. But I'm in a much better place now. And I'm, and now I can say that like, this is probably for the best, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't want it. Like, I would have never stopped fighting for that marriage, but it takes two people to fight, and I think that, there were some things that I think were in Adrian's mind, non-negotiable, that, there was a line that was crossed, and, but if you read my book, which you did, I'm sure you can read between the lines and know that, like, there's a section that I wrote way before this all went down about the blending of families and what that means to take on someone else's children and someone else's baggage and all that entails. And I never walked that road before. I've never dated anybody who was still connected to their ex, and that is a tough road to walk no matter who you are. And I didn't do a very good job of that, and I have older kids. He has younger kids. It was, we weren't aligned in our life goals, I would say, or where we were in our lives. I had just sold a business. He was building a business. The weekends in his life with young kids looked very different than what I wanted maybe mine to look like, with older kids and more freedom, more financial freedom, and so it was like those things got real muddy, and resentment, and I hear about this a lot, and I think we all know it to be true, that like resentment is really, if resentment grows in a relationship, you're kind of fucked, and that's kind of what happened with us. I think there was a lot of resentment on both sides. And so I think that it hit a wall for him, and we're fine now, but it was rough.
I always wondered, again, where the line was, what you're willing to fight for, as a couple. I'm not just talking about you and Adrian. I think about couples in general, especially in midlife. We're a year and a half away from being empty nesters. Mm-hmm. Kate and I are in our 50s, right now. You talk about our boys are similar in age, I think, to Grant and Kit, right?
Yeah. Me too.
We got a 20.
A year and a half left too.
Yeah, 20 and a 17, is where we are. And you get married in your 20s, and now we're in our 50s, and we're very, very different people, that are there. Different. And you go through the entire roller coaster of life and emotions and everything else. And I always really wondered where the line was as a man. Like my dad, I think, stayed for the kids, and unfortunately passed away very early. And I always felt that no matter what, with our two boys, I wasn't going anywhere. Like no matter whatever happened in my relationship, whatever happened in marriage, and we all hit peaks and valleys and anything, that I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't leaving the boys, period.
Yeah.
And now you get to another spot, which is we're about to be empty nesters. The kids are leaving the home. You're in your 50s. And I'm not saying this is happening to us right now. Like specifically, nobody's bolting for the door. But I do understand now that the dynamics in middle age in couples that separate, whether it's amicably or whatever, the alignment and change and everything.
Yeah.
You start to maybe get to this point where, hey, like we had a great run, and now I want, I see a lot of my best days ahead of me, and I don't want to squander certain things. And this is coming up a lot, right now.
Well, and I think that was more the case with my first marriage, which I, met him also when I was in my late 20s. And that was exactly it. It was like, we knew, we used to joke around. Like I used to say to him that like, once our kids leave, you're going to leave me, and he was like, what? Like, that's not true. Blah, blah. But I think it was like a projection, because I think I felt like, I didn't want to, we were neither one of us were happy for so long, but similar to what you're saying, it was like, we wanted to stay in it for the kids, and I'm not saying this is you, but I do think it's a disservice to stay in an unhappy marriage for the kids, because I think the kids then grow up with a very skewed version of what real true love looks like. Because you can't, even the short-lived relationship that I had with Adrian, for the most part was filled with a lot of love. And my kids saw me in a way that they'd never seen me, because I wasn't, I don't know that I was ever really in love with their dad the way I was with Adrian. So when they saw, to me, while it was only 4 years, my kids saw a much happier, a much more loving version of me, maybe until the very end, that I think was a much better model for them of what a marriage and relationship should look like versus what I had with their dad, which was like constant fighting, just not loving and not affectionate. And by the way, I was a very very unaffectionate person back then. Like back then I was like, I think I thought I was like asexual. I did not like to be touched. Like, and I, and this is a lot of, I think this is in my book. I feel like I wrote my book so long ago, I don't even remember, but it was like, yeah, I was a very different person and, really came alive in that way with, in my second marriage. And so I think it was really beautiful that my boys got to witness that side of me and to see, the way, a man and a woman who really love each other interact as a much better model than what they had seen a lot of, so I don't know, and I think that I mean, gosh, there's just so many divorced people, right? I mean, so many people are divorced. So many people are getting divorced at this 40 mark in their 40s. And I think it's because we all kind of get to the same place. It's like, it's like a starter marriage. I mean, you're the exception, but it's like, you've gone through all this shit. You've had kids together. You've seen each other at your very worst. And you're just, in my case, if I'm, and I do talk about this in the book, we probably never should have gotten married and it probably never should have married their dad. It wasn't the right thing. And of course, I know we have these two beautiful kids. We started this amazing business. It's not like it was a loss and I don't regret it. But if I take myself back to those early days when I was dating Cam, I was just, I wanted to get married. I wanted kids. I had a whole plan that I was in my head, that in retrospect, I was married him kind of for the wrong reasons, which I now realize.
You ran through the playbook.
Yeah. And so many people say it that I talk to now are it's it was the right time. We'd been together for a long time. Marriage was the next thing in line. It's we all fell into that.
I don't think that's so different for men. I think it's, look,
totally. I don't either.
You go to school, you graduate, then you get a job, and then you're supposed to get married, and then you're supposed to have, children, and then you move out of the city, if you will, into the suburb, and you commute, and 100%. This is the way, and then you get promoted, and this is the way the whole thing is supposed to go. And you end up again at the dinners where the guys are at one end of the table, the women are at the other end of the table. And this starts to, and then you fast forward 15, 20 years. And I think I kind of think that there's maybe three legs to this stool that you're talking about. There's the looking back and maybe we shouldn't have gotten married in the first place.
Yeah.
There's and I want to talk about this later on. There's we get to a certain point and we have to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
Or release ourselves. And maybe we've grown together and we can do that together. Or there's this, you talk about the middle being messy and the messy truth. And I love it. I've got a chapter in my book that the middle is messy. I say it all the time. And we'll get into the other one, the balance is bullshit, which I also have, in there. But I think there's this third place that the couples, and men and women find themselves in. And that's that space of mediocrity. That's that pocket of mediocrity where they just kind of accept where it is and they don't do anything really about it. And nobody leaves, but nobody's really there either.
I know it sucks, and it's I feel like I'm in such an interesting place in my life now that I'm dating again and, and I'm envious of my friends who are married and but then it's so many of my friends who are married are so unhappy in their marriages and would give anything to be dating again. I mean, it's and then I have a couple of, I have one of my closest friends just got married and she got married a little later in life, but she's madly in love and they're so happy and I'm so happy for them. And, but I feel like I've lived so many angles of relationships. I've been in the really long marriage where you're not that happy, but you're just well, and I felt in my first marriage, I was so, first of all, I didn't want to be a divorced person for whatever fucking reason. And I had this weird shame around it. And then it was I made this commitment and I'm going to honor this commitment. I felt really strongly about that, and just almost ignorance is bliss. It's I don't know what else is out there, and it really was in the end of my marriage, which I talk about in the book. I was starting to find myself like interested in other men. And I was like, ooh, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to cheat. Like, I don't want to have an affair. Like, I didn't want to do that. Not that, like, no judgment, but I didn't want to walk that path. But then, and then I go into another relationship where it was, that I thought was it, and it was like, this is the one that I'll, do all the fighting for. And that there was such a different foundation of love than I'd ever known, really, that I was like, oh, this is the one that I will fight for, and then it was like, oh, nope. So it's like, you just, it's like, but now it's like, now I'm dating again. And now that's kind of like, some days it's like really fun. And some days it really sucks, that I'm like, I don't really want to be dating,
Look, you've got power, you've got money, you've got success. Like, how intimidating is that, do you find, to men? I
think it's pretty intimidating. I mean, the short answer is very, my experience is that men, I feel like now I need to find like a unicorn, because I want to find a man who's like really successful in his own right. Like, and it's not like I'm not looking for like a billionaire to take care of me. I just want somebody who can like travel as much as I can, financially and freedom wise, someone who has like the bandwidth and space to, be like, oh yeah, let's go to Paris for a week. Like, I want that guy, and a guy who's not going to be emasculated by my success or my, my lifestyle or whatever. So yeah.
Do you think like I hear that and I gotta say, like, I think it's empowering.
It is empowering.
Like, I think it's empowering for both. And I say that as like, not to cut you out. I say that as someone, like, I was not raised around like working women, if you will. I didn't see it in my community, where we grew up. I mean, it was like the Real Housewives of Long Island 30 years before there was the Real Housewives show.
Yeah.
Like, men went out and they worked and they did. And we had a community where there was nowhere to go but down, but it was not the women.
Yeah.
That's not what I saw. And like, even now as a father of two boys, two young men, like, I think it's really empowering. I think there's something to this kind of security, masculinity, if you will, about appreciating like a strong, powerful, and I'm not saying this to blow sunshine up your ass. Like, I really believe, like, I think there's something so interesting and intriguing and sexy about that. And I find like the stereotype or even the reality is that guys are intimidated by it. It's, it's scary. They can't compete with it. There's all that stuff. And I'm like, what if you saw it a different way? Like,
well, I mean, I think that it's like, not all men, it's like, not to like out, it's weird to talk about this stuff publicly, but it's like, there are guys like that I am talking to that are, not into, who are like accomplished enough in their own careers in their own right that they're not really intimidated by it. There are some. I have found that there are also some that are just, they don't mean to be emasculated. It just is, there is almost like when you talk about masculine and feminine, there's almost like an unnatural order, because, and listen, like I really love like a really masculine man. Like, I really like, and this is a whole other thing, which I feel like I want to write a book about, like masculine versus feminine, because it's like, I've learned only recently, and like, one of the greatest gifts of this last divorce was like all the work that it set me in to do on my own. And I think one of the things that I really have discovered more than ever is like how much, how interesting the masculine and feminine thing is for me. And like, I'm alpha. I'm a strong, woman who is largely in charge and the boss in a lot of scenarios, right? And it's hard to kind of drop that with a man because it's just who I am, but I desperately want a guy who's like puts me into my feminine versus like, what I'm grappling with is like, can I just come out of it naturally because I'm with the right guy sometimes? Or like, I was dating a guy not that long ago who was like, we would talk about this a lot. And he was telling me about like a friend of his who's been married for a long time. And the wife was like the breadwinner, and he would stay home with the kids. And when the wife would like call him on her way home from work, he would remind her, you're on your way home, get into your feminine, which I know sounds kind of crazy, right? But I was like, I really love that, because it's like a reminder. And this guy that I was dating, when he told me about that, I was like, I love that, because it is almost like a mindset shift of, okay, like you don't have to work anymore. You don't have to like come home and take care of everything the way, or, the way you have been. And so I really like that. But then like a step beyond that is the presence of a very manly, masculine man can draw that out too, is my guess.
Yeah, that's how I'm here. That's how I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
I'm hearing it that like the presence of a masculine man can draw it out and everything there. I hear the sentence of like, okay, honey, it's time to get into your feminine. And I'm just like, I don't think I could ever say those words. Like, I don't think I could ever utter that sentence. Like,
No, I know.
Exactly like that. It's like, but I get where you're going with it. But I do think it's about the presence. I think it's about the security. I think it's about the confidence. One thing you talk a lot about is being yourself, is how important it is to be yourself, be unguarded, and what that takes to actually really be yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and that is, it's really interesting, for I mean, I think for anybody, no matter who they are, I mean, them, being able to like, truly be unguarded and be yourself is, because it is like a little bit of a mind fuck of like, don't want to, we're always in our best behavior when we first meet somebody. So it's like, do we want to really show them all the other stuff? And like, even now that I'm dating and I'm like, man, I don't want to tell people I'm divorced twice. Like, they're going to think I'm such a loser, like, and then I'm like trying to spin that now into like, no, let me reframe that. Like, I just really believe in love, and I do. And who knows, I might get married again. I mean, I probably will. Like, I really believe in love, and obviously like in retrospect, I don't think me and Adrian needed to rush into getting married, but we probably just should have been in a relationship and whatever. But it is like, I believe it's a testament to how much I love,
I think that's a great way to look at it. I mean, I think you can go back and say, look, I can do some, as a postmortem, if you will, on this and say, maybe. But, I can lead with the fact that I truly believe in love.
Yeah.
Is it easier or harder now that you've written the book and that your story is so out there? Meaning that
dating?
Like, hey, like, guess what? I can't hide the fact that I've been divorced. I can't hide the fact that I've had a son through rehab. And I've thought about these as I'm reading your book, and a lot of this is even in my own. It's like, okay, I think things started to become a little bit easier for me, like confidence-wise, security-wise, identity-wise. One, as I got older, because I think I'm a slow learner and a late bloomer to begin with. I think we even talked about this on your show, ages ago. I think where I came from, we grew up super, super fast, but we didn't grow up. We just like did stupid shit really early.
So true.
And then like after my father passed away, I certainly wasn't ready to grow up at all. I wasn't ready to be a father figure to my brothers. I wasn't ready to be on my own or anything. And then like 47 hit that point where it was like, okay, I could squander the rest of my life, or I can, start seeing things differently and get my shit together and do this. And when you started putting stuff out there, at least for me, I actually found it kind of therapeutic and cathartic without going into therapy. Like, okay, I always was afraid of, telling the story that my dad passed away young and what that did to me and my trauma. I was always embarrassed about my brother going to prison, and what happened there. So all of these things that had gone, all of a sudden, like, and my family is not happy at all. And I don't know how you're has responded to any of it, but like, when you start writing about this stuff, when you start putting this stuff out there, even if you're doing it in your own voice, in your own way, and it's not like you're saying, you got to be careful. Like, I heard a lot of people very close to me and sharing a lot of that stuff, but I do feel like it was for a reason overall. And it certainly wasn't to hurt anybody else, but there isn't anybody now that I feel like, listen, that doesn't know me. Like, you can read anything I put out there and a lot about me.
Yeah.
You don't really know me, but it's easier. It's kind of like, you can't make fun of me being bald because I already talk about myself
Yeah.
being bald
Yeah.
all the time.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
like
Yeah.
you just own it all and it's out there. So like, was that part of it, for you?
Well, I think that, like, I think for me, putting it all out there started, when I was going through my first divorce, and it was more of like, I had spiraled into such a dark place. It was compounded, by the fact that, like, Cam and I were breaking up, and we'd been together for so many years, and that, my son was going off the rails and really struggling. And, the fact that, like, I had gone from being partnered up with somebody for 16 something years, and then now I'm on my own and just reacclimating to life, and, like, just not having a partner in all the ways, and, like, not having somebody to talk to about things with our kids and life, and then not having, like, someone to just help me in the day to day. And the first, like, year was really rough for me and Cam. And so we were also, like, we had started this big business together. And because we had so many employees and so many people were, like, asking what was going on, and it was like we felt like it was kind of our responsibility to just more tell our employees what was happening. And so I had posted on my Instagram, which was pretty small at the time. It was really more just like our employees and, like, Drybar people, and said, hey, this is what, Cam and I have separated. And, almost like a statement on my Instagram with a picture of me and Cam. Cam, of course, read it and approved it first. And the response to it was so overwhelming, and people were so supportive and so engaged with it. And then, as my life kind of spiraled too, I felt like I can't, like, post and be out there talking about, like, this fake version of me that doesn't exist. Like, I needed to be pretty transparent if I was going to be public. And I was kind of straddling the fence between, like, the Drybar stuff and my life. And so I was kind of, like, started to open up and be raw about it. And then that response was really amazing, and how much people were, like, felt very seen, because, like, they were going through something like that too. And that has continued to go on, that I have felt it's kind of, like, motivated me to talk about that stuff more and more because of how deeply it resonates with people.
Well, I think it's very inspiring. And I think the
Yeah.
reality is, like, you talk about messy truth, messy middle, balance is bullshit. It's like all of these things are connected. They're all in the same
Yeah.
bucket.
Yeah.
Like, you as a mother, as a wife, or as an ex-wife, as a CEO, like, all these things are in this, taking care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. They're all in the same bucket. I don't think they
Yeah.
can be compartmentalized
No.
or disconnected. And I think that's where, again, this whole notion of, like, balance, becoming bullshit, at least the way I see it, is it's like,
Yeah.
at different parts and stages of your life, certain things are going to take priority, over others. There's never going to be perfect balance, or certainly not in a day. I read some of these, like
That's what,
people's days, and I'm just like, please, like, no way. Like, we overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in a year. And people
yeah.
mistake balance for, like, I
So
have to
true.
do 500 things in a single day
Yeah.
versus, like, playing the long game and looking at it. But I also think that the point you're making, which I concur with, is that I think the more vulnerable and the more transparent you are, the more support you actually garner, because it's like, wow, wait a minute. She's in the trenches, running a business, building a business, trying to coexist with her ex, trying to raise her kids at the same time. And at the same time, the business is based around blow drying hair, for that, like, which, again,
Yeah.
sorry, not a customer. Okay. But in there, but it's like the irony of, like, the things that make you feel good and the things that make you feel confident, like getting your hair blown out, and then growing
Yeah.
and scaling the business to, there's always stuff you're not seeing unless I let you see it. Like, what's going on behind the scenes in
Yeah.
there. So I wanted to, like, do you think, like, I guess, like, would you, I guess, change it? Like, if you were looking back, I know you talk about, like, not really, that hustle, that grind. You said, oh, and we were building a big business. But, like, here's the truth. You don't build a big business. You start with a small business. It wasn't a big business when you started out. Like, all these businesses that become big businesses, and we see the outcome and we see the end game and
Yeah.
the exit, but, like, they start with an idea. They start with no money. They start with an idea. They start with a brother. They start with a husband. They start with, bankrolling it by selling a house or mortgaging a house or whatever else, the risk that's there.
Mm-hmm.
And like, would you change? And it comes at a cost.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't change a single thing. Not for a second. I mean, I think that my path was perfectly my path, and there was, I don't know if you saw, I posted the other day. It was a pretty emotional post about,
which one?
I'm like, sometimes I got to go a little lighter. I've seen a post, I think that George Clooney posted that. Then I made a video.
Right. You don't learn anything. You don't learn anything from success. You learn everything from failure. Yeah. We're like kindred spirits. I cried at that one too. And I reposted. I'm like, oh, no.
Because, it was such a moment of clarity. And it's funny how these things for so long and then you hear it framed a certain way and you're like, oh, right, that. And it just gets you, and that's what happened for me in that video. But yeah, I mean, I really don't have any regret. I mean, do I wish that I was happily married and in love and in a partnership? Yes, I do. I wish that was my situation right now. But, I also don't think, and I truly believe this, I don't believe that I would be as evolved of a person as I am now had I not gone through this heartbreak with Adrian, and I don't think I would be who I was, 5 years ago had I not gone through that heartbreak with my first husband and what had happened with my son. And, and so all of those situations, as hard and sad as they were, in looking back, they were really the things that have made me who I am. And I think that I know that they were necessary, unlocks or conduits to what I've needed to learn about myself. I just don't think that there was ever going to be any other way, this was always the way it was meant to go. And and again, if I had to draw a picture of what my life looked like it wouldn't be exactly what it is now, but I have to believe that this is I've really leaned into my spiritual life, and I've really I feel like I've connected to God a lot in the last year. And I do really believe that what happens to us is what's meant to happen to us. And there is, I don't know that there's a set plan. I don't believe that as much as I believe that there is everything does really happen the way it's supposed to happen. And I can't see it right now, through what I've been through. But I actually, recently saw a commencement speech that Steve Jobs gave where he was you can't see the dots looking forward. You can only see how they connect looking back. And I was like, wow, it's so true. Right now, my life isn't where I thought it would be or where I even really wanted it to be. But I do really believe that I will see at some point, and I'll be able to look back and be like, if this hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? And so I have a lot of truly faith in that piece of it, and so no, I've never had any regret, and then even what my son went through, which was actual hell. I mean, what my son went through and what we all went through as a result. I mean, that was there's nothing sadder or scarier than when it's your kid and your kid is in trouble. And my kid was in real fucking trouble. And I was out of my mind with fear and sadness, that it was almost unbearable. It was that bad. And however, I would not even change that, because the person that he became as a result of that, and and what happened to our relationship and all that I learned and all that we evolved as a family is remarkable, that I wouldn't change it. And he wouldn't change it either. Actually, I've started a new podcast called The Messy Truth, which I haven't publicly put out there yet, but it's less about entrepreneurs, more about the messy truth of people's lives. And my son is coming home from college on Saturday, and I'm going to do an episode with him to talk about all this stuff,
I think as interesting as entrepreneurship is,
yeah,
I got to tell you, it's not nearly as interesting as the messy truth. It's not nearly as interesting as like what again
Yeah.
is going on behind the scenes. What is the stuff that we're not seeing unless people actually let us in? I think it makes the success of entrepreneurship, I think it makes it more understandable. I also think the part of entrepreneurship that is so often overlooked is again like how hard entrepreneurship is, how most people are not cut out for entrepreneurship, the toll that it takes on relationships, individuals, families, so on. You know, you were talking in the book, and I know, and you're traveling around and you're opening Drybars, and we're missing birthdays, we're missing moments, we're
Yeah.
not being home at dinner. And I know there's this stat that I had heard because I talked to my boys about it, about, you spend, I think it's like 80 or 90% of your time with your kids up until they're 17. I think it's 17 or something. And then it's like, they're gone. It's like, you got 10% of your time, with your kids left. And I had printed that stat out, and I've talked to my boys, and I was like, no. We are, first of all, we're going to be in the 10%. Like we're going to beat this stat. Like I refuse to accept that like we're on the downslope of the time, or if anything, certainly quality over quantity of time together. And I think with what your son went through, and I'm not saying that I have any experience with that other than my brother, going to rehab, going to like all, and being around and seeing that. I think that there's this opportunity that you've also talked about, this reconnection, and part of the reinvention and release of yourself and him is all this time that you now get to spend together.
Yeah.
This quality time now that, the entrepreneurial success allows you to do. Like the exit was there. Like I can either, I can squander this, or I can continue to hustle, grind, and do all this, or I can now reinvest in my family, reinvest in myself, use the proceeds of my success and everything that it cost me. Now I can use it to invest and get return in my life and my family.
100%. And, even now, I mean, my one son, Grant, is in college. So, I don't see him that much, but, we're still really close. And I've been out to Denison probably more than most moms who are especially across the country, because he's playing football.
Sucks, right?
Huh?
Like I know he's at Denison and he's playing football. Like it sucks when they leave. Like mine's a sophomore in Boulder.
It was really hard. It was such an interesting time because I was so emotional about him leaving, and like I couldn't even talk about it without bursting into tears. But then my marriage fell apart like 3 months before he left. And I was so heartbroken over that it got kind of clouded by now I was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, life. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm so heartbroken already about my son leaving. And then this happens. And I and then I'm supposed to launch a book, like talk about your world come crashing down. I was like, you can't make this shit up, but we're in such a better place now. And even it's ironic to be talking about this today because my younger son, Kit, who's largely been the more private one of the two, he's thriving right now. And he was literally saying to me last night, he was like, I'm telling me how much he liked his life and how happy he is. And, and he was really the boys were really heartbroken over the breakup too. And I was saying to him, I was like, it's so funny. A year ago, we were all so sad. And it was like, we had to we moved into a new house and we had to restart our lives. And I was like, and you just told me you're happier than you have ever been. Isn't that funny? Like it was such a hard time. Kit was not happy about moving, and but he loves this house that we're in so much more. He loves his life more than ever. And I said to him, I was like, I really enjoyed it just being the two of us. And he said it too. He's like, I feel like I've gotten so much of your attention than I ever have because it's just the two of us, and it's been so beautiful.
Isn't that the nice thing about reinvention? Like
exactly.
one, I think it's all of you. It's not just one. And two, it's about that hope and that possibility and that different lens that you see things through.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Is this the best part in a way of the exit? Like when you sold the company, I just want to go back to that for a second. What did you feel? Like, was it really is it this launching pad of now I can, or was it, I'm losing some of my identity, or was it all of it was
all of that. Truth be told, we were, and you probably read this in the book, we took money off the table at different points when we were raising money. So it didn't happen for me in like one big tranche of like, oh, now look at your bank account. It was slowly over time that we had basically personally had like 3 liquidity events in my 10 years with Drybar.
Can I ask you one question? How did each one affect you? Meaning like incentive wise, like, you went all in at the beginning and then you get a liquidity event and then like, did it decrease motivation? Did it decrease, like you get these did it start to like not matter? And you like, okay, here's another liquidity event. It doesn't really change my life anymore. Am I still all committed? Or by the way, now the cost is too high and I have money. So like, I don't have to take any more risk and I can go do what I want to do. Like along the way, did things start to change?
Yeah. I mean, the first liquidity event was pretty small, relatively speaking. So that didn't really change anything. And then the second was much larger. And that was a little more, it could have potentially changed anything, but like any smart private equity firm will not allow you to take enough money where you're not motivated. It's like, it's the kicker, which is smart. And it's the way it should be. It's like, we're going to like allow you to take enough off the table where you feel really comfortable in your life, but not enough where you're like, I don't fucking care what happens to this thing. So they were smart in that regard. And I wasn't ready emotionally to like walk away from the business anyway. So, I don't even know that there's an amount of money that could have made me say, oh, fuck you, I'm done. And I know that now because at this stage in my life, after selling the company and having nothing to do with it anymore and being, completely free of it, there is a lot of stuff for me around identity and like who I am now. But to your other point, it is really so, I feel so grateful, so grateful and lucky that I, have the freedom in my life that I have right now. And by the way, back to the rehab thing, it's not lost on me how lucky we were that we were able to foot the bill for how much it was almost 2 years of my son away. And it was very,
I'm glad you said that because, I'm glad you mentioned that because, look, there is a financial aspect to so many of these things.
And I used to say to my, I always said, I would spend every penny I had to help Grant. Like that was like, because he had a little bit of an inkling about how expensive these things were, mainly not because I was telling him, but because what I was seeing, which is so heartbreaking and terrible, is that so many of these programs are so, they are so expensive that it's like, part of me is like, I mean, listen, it helped my son. So I can only speak well of it, but I saw firsthand from my son, a lot of parents were like pulling out second mortgages on their homes and, going into debt to help their kids, and their kids still came out and went back to drugs. So, it feels a little like a racket, the whole business of rehab for kids. Not totally. And I think it was like, I believe my son was a little bit of a unicorn in that he was one of the kids who like really like did the work, and a lot of kids like phoned it in, Anyways, I think, that's a whole other subject. And, there was a time where I was really gung ho about maybe starting some sort of foundation to help parents who, and I feel like on some level I probably should do that at some point, but I didn't. Anyways, I do feel like we were really, really, really lucky that we were able to put our son through this with like no problem, And now at this point in my life, what's fascinating is like, once you've sold a company, and you hear this from founders all the time. And I know, like, I'm careful how I talk about this because it's a little like, oh, boo-hoo for you. Like, you've made all this money and now you're like, now who am I? But living a life without like purpose, and we've all heard this, right? And like, but living in this, like, I don't really have to do stuff now. Like, I can go travel the world and I have so much freedom, is like a really bizarre place to be, and not a place that I'm comfortable in, So for the last, like, since we sold Drybar, it was almost 4 years ago, I have been in this, like, who am I now? What do I want to be doing? Which was also kind of like the rub with Adrian, because he was so building his company. And I was like, oh, I guess I should be like working too, which is like, but what does that look like for me now? And now it's like, now I'm getting 3.5 years later, I'm just starting to get my footing. It's like, I wrote this book. That was a big thing. And then I do a lot of speaking, and that's a big thing, but I've also started a mastermind, and I'm about to launch this big like online community. And I have like a handful of projects, and I have this other hair project that I'm working on now, because it's like, my life isn't over. I want to be doing something. I have the luxury of doing what I want more at my pace and being able to fund things and all that. But
I think that's a really good point, and I'm glad to hear that you're going there. One, the investment that you can make in your kids, and we all want to, okay? But there are financial realities to everything. We go through them, whether or not, listen, in-state tuition versus out-state tuition, rehab versus not being able to. I paid a hack who did nothing for one of my family member, like in there. These things are expenses if you don't get return. They're investments if you get return, just like anything else, in there. And there are realities to it. And I often hear, obviously, the male side of it, there too, about funding these things and staying on the treadmill, or the wheel or whatever. And there are realities to this. And I'm glad that you went there with one, not only on the rehab side, you also wrote about, it's like, look, you drew the line at $100,000 in a dating service, or a matchmaker, but there's nothing that you wouldn't spend on your son, which I completely
make sure that's clear. I did not spend $100,000 on a matchmaker. I just want to make sure.
We'll just put that right across the bottom with a little asterisk, for you. But it stood out, and then on the business side, I think what you're talking about is also really, really interesting, because I think there's a lot of this quit your job and follow your passion, and especially in middle age, and life is too short and you better do it. But that can be I call it like very galactically irresponsible, especially like if you don't have the runway, if your passion is not going to pay necessarily the bills or keep you in the lifestyle that you've grown accustomed to, or you have kids going off to college, or it's going to eat away at all of your nest egg. You took big risk younger and starting out. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, do. Now you can see entrepreneurship from a completely different, there's really not that much risk, I guess, is what it's a different risk perspective, I guess. You've mitigated all of the risk. If you make investments or start anything right now, it's not the same as going all in as when you were in, your 20s. And I think, again, a lot of guys come to me, I want to do this and I want to do that. And we go, well, let's make a plan. Let's look at the fucking numbers. Okay. Let's see how this shakes out. Because, by the way, I know you want to be like a cobbler, but being a cobbler does not pay as much as an orthopedic surgeon. And you're not ready for this because you have 6 months of runway if you stop operating on people.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there's a different risk, and I also just I kind of have the playbook now, it's like, I'm even, I'm working on a new hair thing, which I haven't talked about yet. I'm raising a little money
to break it here. Like, we're good at that.
It's not ready to be broken, but we are raising some money for it. And we just really know how to do that now. We know who to call, we know what to do. And it's interesting because it's funny looking at going forward in something like this now, because it's so much clearer. When we were doing it back then, it was so scary and risky because we didn't know our, head from our ass. And not to say that we won't make missteps and make mistakes. I'm sure we will, but there's certainly different ones than before, because we just really didn't know what we were doing before. And now we have a much better idea of what to do and how to do it. And so it is really interesting. And I do also tell people that same advice about, I am a big believer and advocate for go do what you love. Life is too short, but set yourself up. If you are going to quit your job, give yourself a year of your current salary and hustle on the side until you can give yourself, another year of runway and cut back on things and cut back on dinners and all that stuff so that you're in a position to do that, and when we first started Drybar, I didn't take barely any money for a year, I'm sorry, for 3 years. I think my salary was $30,000 for the first 2 to 3 years. I mean, it was nothing. Luckily, my husband at the time had a good job, and that was supporting us, But it was I was on a budget. I used to have a budget app of everything I spent in a day and a month, and that was all I could spend, and we were very frugal for a very, very long time. until we
And
couldn't
it's
be.
one thing on your own. It's another thing if we're just married. It's another thing if we have kids. It's another thing if we have kids at certain ages. It's another thing if we've piled on other lifestyle expenses and all these other things. And so I think you make a number of good points in here. One about being responsible at the timing of it. And I think the other thing is not all of your passions need to become, your profession.
It's
That
so true.
people are so quick to jump into like all these things.
I have a new business idea every 5 minutes. And like my best friend is like, you don't have to turn that into a business. I'm like, well, but I feel like I should, I mean, and even right now I have so much on my plate that I'm like, but I am very aware of like, I have a lot of, and throwing a lot of things at the wall, and I'm going to see what sticks and what works and what brings me joy and happiness and what feels right and what resonates out there, and then pull it back from there. But yeah, I mean, I want to start a new business every 5 minutes.
I think, again, I think that resonates. I think a lot of us do. It's like we don't run out of ideas.
Yes.
Okay. But ideas without execution don't do shit. Okay. And you could jump on all of these ideas, and most of them are not going to necessarily pan out for a variety of reasons, as we've discussed, or you could do less with more focus. You could go narrow and deep. And I also like when you talk about you have all these business ideas, but it also sounds like, look, like you're the product now.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the center of it all, like you're the product, the work that you're doing on yourself, the book that you've written, the going out and speaking, the doing the math. Like at this point in your life, like you're the product personally and professionally.
Yeah.
And the experimenting and work, if that's the right word, or just the work again that you're doing on yourself and what you're getting yourself involved in.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's a business, but it's very, very different, obviously, from the business that you built. But because you've built that and had success, there's so much interest in the how you're living and seeing things right now.
I hope so. That's what I'm banking on.
Yeah, but I think the harder part is a lot of what you're tackling, which is making it relatable and the transparency and like, hey, here's what you didn't see, or here's what the realities of the situation, really are. And
that's really
the boohoo thing, but like a lot of it really is boohoo. And let me tell you why.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, I'm just living a human experience, and I think it is really, it does really motivate and inspire a lot of people. And I've done some great things and I've done some shitty things, and I've been, great and I've been terrible, and it's like, I like to be really, transparent with all of that. And I think it does really resonate with people. So it is an interesting time for me for sure. And I'm really grateful.
You made a list. I think it was on Instagram today or yesterday about, all this, all the things that you do. And it was like journaling and meditation and all of this other stuff in there. But it was a very good list. I'll just comment, takes a lot of time, obviously, which is great to do all of those things. I don't do all those
things every day, to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one, that's a great clarification, and two, I think that a lot of those things are coping mechanisms for other things that are going on.
1,000%. And I mean, that's the thing is like, I try to like probably half of the world, I have the 5-minute gratitude journal. Like I write in it every morning and every night. Like, it takes 5 minutes. It's very quick, but it's a good thing to do in the morning. You first wake up and right before you go to bed. I always do that. Every single day I walk my dog. Like my goal is 12,000 steps a day. So that is, unless it's raining, which it has not stopped raining. It's about to rain right now in LA. But other than that, I walk a ton, and there are some things that are like, I have to do on a daily basis, or I'm like, I'm not a great version of myself. And then those other things kind of filter in and out. But I'm really grateful for those practices and those tools as I see them, because I think that they really are what help me, to your point, like cope on a daily basis. It's like we underestimate how important all that stuff is for like our mental capacity. It's huge,
I have a thing called the 6 F's, and it was my kind of not reinvention, but release, the notion that for years I was chasing salary and title because that's what I was supposed to do. And that's what success was supposed to look like. And it found me in quite a place where it didn't feel like success. I made this shift from this chasing of salary and title to what I call the 6 F's: family, fitness, finance, food, fashion, and fun.
See that on your page. I love that. Yeah.
Thank you. And when I stopped chasing the salary and title and I started to look at these 6 F's as kind of the metric for success, a more holistic metric of success, and what really made up a better, I don't want to use the word balance because we thought balance is bullshit, but a more holistic life, cumulative life portfolio of what brought me happiness and fulfillment and what was really important. That became my 6 in there. And I would love to get your quick little take, like your little thesis on each one. Like if I say family to you, like what does that mean?
I mean, it's like everything. There's nothing more important to me than family, than my boys. Like, would walk through fire for them. They're everything to me, for sure.
Fitness, and I have these in order. To me, I think they go in order. Yes.
Yeah. Well, family
fitness,
is good.
which is really health.
Yeah. I mean, that is a big one for me too. I mean, that's where with the 12,000 steps, like I make it to me, like walking is so good for my body. It's good for my back. It's good for my brain, my soul. Like I love walking so much. And I work out with a trainer. It's a little expensive, but it's also like, for me, it's something that I made the investment in a few months ago because I know how I've read so much about how important it is to have, especially for women at the age, I'm about to be 49, and like how much muscle is important. So I work out with a trainer. I happen to like adore my trainer. He's amazing. So we also have a lot of fun together, and it's like, that's been a real joy for me. So I do that, and a couple other I do this thing called Lec Fit, which is here in LA, which is like you're on a trampoline, basically bouncing for 45 minutes, which is great for the lymphatic system. So like I do that. I do that about 4 days a week, and then I walk every day. So, and I have an infrared sauna and a cold plunge. So I do those pretty regularly too. And I love all of that, and that is like as much for my body as it is for my mind. So that's how I think of fitness.
2 things that really landed with me right there. And I love all of the things that you were talking about. One of them is that you invested in a trainer, because I always tell people before you go buy a piece of equipment or before you go just even join a random,
do it.
Right. Just go interview a few trainers, find the one that's the right one for you, and get somebody that can help you do it, because that is the best money you'll ever spend before you go throw it away on anything else.
Yeah. I mean, it's like an hour with him, with my trainer. We do so, and I'm also one of those people, like, I do not have my phone in the gym. Like, I'm like, let's fucking go. No breaks. Let's go. And I work so hard in that hour. But if I was by myself, and I've tried to do it by myself, I'm like on my phone, and you just don't work as hard. And like to get in that like very concentrated hour I believe, I agree with you. I think trainers are worth it in that regard. For sure.
Absolutely. And the second thing you mentioned was fun in there, which is the 6th F. We'll get to that in a second, that it has to be fun.
Yeah.
That let's not mistake that fun is a huge element of any kind of sustainable fitness and health program that you want to get on. If it's not fun, we're done. Right. Exactly.
Right. It's like people forget that like fun is essential, like to your soul,
So that will get to the 6th F. Finance. Money.
Finance. Well, yeah, I mean, finance is interesting. It's like I think because I'm self-made, and because I can be really, really cheap. And then I'm so polar opposites. Like I can nickel and dime people and be so cheap, and I can be so like really tight with money on certain things. And then on some things, I'm like a maniac and I'll spend so much, but it's like for me, flying first class is a big deal, not because I want to be bougie, but because like it's hard on my body. And I know it's hard on a lot of people's body. And I just feel like that's an indulgent for me. I'm willing to spend a little extra money to be able to like put my legs up. Like that just is a big deal to me, And so that's something that I'll spend money on. And then there's other things that I'm like, like I would not spend money on that. Like I drive myself everywhere. I get offered like car services all the time when I do events. I'm like, no, I want to drive. It's like it's just, everybody has like their things that are important. And that is a big one for me.
And that's why we do this, because you see, in that regard, like one, yes, I totally get the first class thing, but the very first thing that I would get is a driver. Like I've always even said to Kate, I'm like, to me, like I can't stand driving. I can't stand parking.
You see, I love driving. Like I love listening to music. I like being in control. Maybe there's like some control stuff for me there. I also get so nauseous in the back of a car. So nauseous. I can't. So no, I'll never have a driver.
I want the driver, pick me up, drop me off, go, and then run a few errands while I'm gone and everything. I can sit in the back.
I mean, that part of it is nice. I wish I could just leave my car wherever I want. That would be nice.
So buy a passenger, hire a passenger.
Okay. I don't want anybody with me.
That's what you need. You need to hire a passenger. Okay.
A fake passenger.
Food, which is also like food, nutrition.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me right now. I literally just hired a nutritionist, ironically, because I am trying to figure out how to eat differently for like my age and like premenopause and all of that stuff. And so we're really like, she has been oh my God, like such a wealth of information for me that I'm like blown away, like trying to like change how I eat, when I eat, and what I eat. It's really fascinating to me. So I'm in like, because I historically have been like a faster, like I'll fast, until like 12 or 1 o'clock in the day. And then but then I'm so hungry like at night. And so we're shifting all of that to like get me to be eating more during the morning and day and like a lot less at night. And then, and eating like, kind of macro eating, like a certain amount of protein, carbs, and vegetables. So it's really all very fascinating to me. I'm in a bit of a interesting food journey right now, trying to figure out, because after my divorce, I like lost like 20 pounds and I was like, oh, this is great. This is how you lose weight. You just stop eating. That's obviously not sustainable, but that's all I know, So I'm like, how do I get to where I want to be by eating differently and working out and whatever. So that's what I'm in education right now for that.
Interesting in that regard, because, one of the other things I say a lot is, run your life like you run your business. And we need to be educated. We need to recruit the right team. Right. We need to figure it out. We wouldn't accept underperforming quarter after quarter in our business. So why would we accept it in our life? Who are we going to get? How are we going to build it out? What's the plan going to look like? Hey, maybe I try counting, or maybe I try keto, but maybe that doesn't work. And now we have to look at it this way. But we're trying to run really a successful business, which is us too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last two were fashion and fun, which is really style, and we talked about fun a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I love both of those. I mean, fashion is such a big thing for me. I love clothes, and I love shopping, and I love, I'm really big on the way like the clothes make me feel. But I'm like a high-low girl. Like I'll buy, a really expensive bag, but then I love a good find at Target, so I'm all over the board on that. And then fun.
Does it matter for you? Last question. Does it matter for you as far as like the men, like do you care that much about like men's style? Yeah. Yes,
I do. I feel like that is, yes. And it's like, I feel like every guy I like a guy who like is really like aware of his fashion choices, and, but I like a Buck Mason kind of just really classic kind of, is that Buck Mason? I love Buck Mason for men, I mean, I like a man who like likes, it's like simple, classic, cool. Like, I don't know if you can say chic for a man, but there is that like, I think Buck Mason has really nailed it for men. I really love their style. So yeah. And it is important to me.
And I'm going to give you a pass on fun because you touched on it before, and I know you have to go. It was so great to see you.
So great to see you. Thank you for the real conversation. It's definitely where I like to be these days, and I think it's so much better than the stuff that nobody cares about. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Anything I can do to support you, I'm always happy to do it. Take care, Alli. Thanks so much.
Great.
Thanks so much for listening. If you can leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, that would mean so much to us and really help us out. Also, be sure to subscribe and check us out on YouTube at Midlife Male. We'll see you next time.